is, I think, like the 25th, I think, yeah. I have no idea. It's a Wednesday. I'm here to talk about something that's a little bit harder for me to talk about than transgenderism, and that's going to be mental illness. I'm at a point where I'm like making a ton of headway and learning how to live with mental illness. And I just want to share because it's something that I feel like a lot of people struggle with and don't really know, or they have loved ones that struggle with it and they don't know how to get help or anything. Like, 'cause, I don't know. I first heard the term borderline when I was 17. My parents, or maybe 18, my parents dragged me into the psychiatrist's office after I had a nervous breakdown in high school. My bird died. I had a cockatiel, and I just kind of lost it. I ran out of the house and was gone for like 2 hours, came back with just like wild eyes and like scratches all over me. And I mean, it wasn't the first. I've been self-injuring for a while. And my parents' way of handling that was kind of grounding me. I mean, I don't know, like, I just want to preface this as saying, like, you know, what are, like, the root causes of borderline personality issues is parenting, is emotional withholding or emotional neglect. I don't really know how I feel about the word neglect. Neglect makes it sound really purposeful, when a lot of times it's not. You know, no one knows how to parent. I just want to preface this video with that statement that, you know, parenting is hard. No, there's no guidelines for it. And when your kid has mental problems or mental issues, like, and mental illness, like, and it's your first kid, like, you're not gonna know what to do. You're not gonna know who to turn to. So I don't blame my parents for anything. You know, I've come to terms with those resentments, and yeah. So I just wanted to preface it with that, just in case my parents watch this video and think that I'm going to be, like, trash-talking their parenting or whatever. You know, styles of parenting had changed. You know, my parents are more conservative. They followed older styles of parenting. I don't know. But I first heard the term borderline in a psychiatrist's office when I was 17, which is a little, I personally don't think that personality disorders should be diagnosed in adolescence unless there's, like, really serious problems. You know, this psychiatrist didn't look at me during the intake, not once. He sat there facing the computer. Do you have black and white thinking? And I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, okay. And, like, you know, there was no interaction. Yeah, and I went to one appointment with the therapist, and then it ended up just getting the plug pull because it was too expensive. So yeah, that really put me off of that, and I started reading more about borderline, and I would come across it a lot in, like, feminist conversations about psychology, and I kind of had that, you know, point of view that, oh, you're just trying to pathologize who I am, like, you know, it's, like, I saw Girl Interrupted, Winona Ryder's character, / the author, has borderline personality disorder, and the way it's is portrayed in that is as some way to pathologize femininity. Which I think there is, like, a lot of weight to that because it is more diagnosed in women and than in men. I think that has a lot to do with the fact that a lot of the symptoms, like, you know, drinking and you know, binge drinking, self-destructive behavior, promiscuity, those kind of things would raise a red flag in a woman, whereas socially they wouldn't raise a red flag for a guy. I think a lot of guys are undiagnosed borderline. I think it's really common, and a lot of times, like, sorry, a bird interruption. I mean, mostly it's a co-diagnosis. Like, most people who have borderline personalities, who fall along that spectrum, are also bipolar or depressed or have OCD, or a range of or other issues. It's a biosocial disorder, which means that there is definitely a chemical component to it. But it's mainly rooted in upbringing and in how the person learned to develop emotional skills, and also there's a lot of intersections with trauma and PTSD. I'm personally co-diagnosed with major depressive, clinical depression, which just means chronic depression, like. As a, you know, because some depressive episodes are more situational. They happen because of, you know, a big traumatic life event. The chronic depression means it's just a innate chemical imbalance that makes you incapable of creating and retaining feelings of happiness or pleasure. And then also I have a PTSD diagnosis. I have a history of sexual trauma. And a thing with borderline is like when you don't take care of your PTSD, a lot of times that's where the personality fragmentation and the emotional volatility comes into play. So PTSD and borderline are very commonly diagnosed together. Borderline also shares a lot of similar fragmentation to dissociative identity disorder, especially when it's co-diagnosed with PTSD because of the depersonalization during psychotic episodes or during triggered episodes. I know I just like threw a bunch of like psych words at you, but yeah, I mean basically the symptoms of borderline that I experience are like cycling through like really intense emotions, like flipping on a dime, just having very polar extremes that don't have the extended cycle that, you know, bipolar disorder has. Bipolar disorder is a mood disorder. So it's chemical predominantly, whereas, like I said, borderline has social and trauma-based elements to it as well. He's killing me right now. Yeah, so other symptoms are extreme. It's not so much black and white thinking. Like, I was always confused by that because I consider myself a fairly open-minded person. But the black and white more refers to like how you conceptualize like solutions to problems or like just emotional spheres. Like I'm very like all or nothing. Like, you know, I'm either totally despondent and detached from what's going on in reality, or I'm like just really intense. You know, borderline people are often very creative. They're often very, very intelligent and very empathetic. And a big element to this, you know, personality alignment that can cause problem in someone's life, which is what personality disorder means. Like, it took me a long time and a lot of drinking over my diagnosis and to figure out that, like, it's not your personality that's, like, the problem. Like, your personality is what it is. It's your personality. It's how can you make that personality work in your life? Like, learning to tone it the fuck down, like, basically. Learning to put space between the urge, like, just the need, and then the impulse, and then the action. Like, learning to separate those things. Yeah, so some of the other things I experienced with borderline, definitely, like, the impulsivity, the urges, the kind of the fleeting sense of self, the internal emptiness, like kind of constant emptiness, deep self-loathing, and suicidal ideation. You know, these are like a borderline thinking can go from 0 to like 60 or 0 to 100 in like a second. You know, from going to losing my keys to being like, I'm a loser, I'm awful, I'm gonna like, you know, lose everything forever. My life is always going to be in shambles. I should just kill myself now. You know, that's where my thought process goes. And I don't know. You can read a lot about borderline. It's definitely a pretty elusive disorder that's still people are still trying to understand the full breadth of it. But, you know, a big component of it is like most borderline people are these innately sensitive types and innately kind people who are born into a world that is neither of those things, and that creates just a kind of baseline of like not feeling comfortable with the world around you, which is what causes sort of the tendency to be escapist or to be avoidant, which are really borderline symptoms. I wanted to talk more in this video about how to get help for borderline personality disorder, or how to, you know, help a loved one see this, because, like, there's a lot of overlap between borderlines and alcoholics, and it's the same thing. You know, you can't tell someone who's an alcoholic they're an alcoholic. They're never going to see it until they're in a place where they can see it. And, because I know, like, so many people tried to talk to me about my drinking when I was out there, and they all got the same, you know, response, like, fuck you, I don't have a problem, like, throw a bottle at you, like, close the door on your way out, like, don't, like, go away. Like, if you can't roll with me, if you can't roll with how hard I drink, go away. Like, you're not, you know, you're not like me, like, like, so, yeah, it's definitely kind of the same thing when I would hear the borderline thing tossed around by, like, you know, friends who would suggest it to me, or, like, you know, that doctor back when I was 17. It was just like, no, I'm not. I don't have a problem. My personality's awesome. I'm awesome, and my personality is awesome. But it does cause a lot of problems for me. I am intense. I'm bombastic. I'm all or nothing. Like I'm very loud. I'm a very big person. So basically, how it's so hard, but like most like alcoholics, most borderlines aren't going to get help. Especially because little is understood about it. It's a very stigmatized disorder, even within the psychology community. A lot of people refuse to treat borderlines because they find them needy and annoying and untreatable. Thankfully, there is help. That is like, I really felt hopeless for a long time when I first got the diagnosis, because those are a lot of the messages surrounding borderline, is that like it does not respond to medication. Most people with it kill themselves. Like, you know, it's not a lot of hope in how people talk about borderline. Especially when like everybody has a borderline ex. Like everybody has somebody in their life that like poisons any mention of that for them. So I mean, I had to bottom out to get help. You know, I hit rock bottom. And, like, I was faced with losing everything, losing my relationship. I almost lost my life. I was losing jobs. I was just at the end of my fucking rope. Like, I was at the end of my rope. And, I don't know. Like, I do the AA thing and I shrug and say it was probably God, because I really have no human way of explaining the 180 in attitude I had, but that's the only reason I got help, was that I had this 180 where all of a sudden I was on a roof, blackout drunk, took hours to like get me down. I, went 3 weeks without drinking, started drinking again, like, and it was making me sick. Like, it was making me sick, and I was at the crossroads, it was like I can either go down this path that I'm going down and continue to drink and continue to be on a fucking roof, like getting into fights, waking up covered in piss on a train, like passing out, like on my stoop at 1 PM, like, I can continue going down that road and see where that leads me, which is on a roof, which is like trying to kill myself, which is like dying and being remembered as like a girl and never living out like this other like side of my life that's been here that I wanted to be physical. It was a lot to swallow, and I don't know, it just all kind of coalesced in this really like amazing way where I all of a sudden shit just started to matter to me. Like I kind of, and I do credit it with the death of an acquaintance who kind of I don't know, it really shook me up. Like, it was kind of the first peer I'd lost, and we were similar people in our temperament, I believe. Just really passionate, big people. And the way people talked about her was kind of the way I feel like people would talk about me. And I hate to make something about myself that much, but that's what had me valuing my own life. That's when I started noticing I matter to people, and I don't matter to myself, and that's a problem. And what do I do about that? So it was getting sober that allowed me, like, once I got in AA and, like, started being honest with therapists with, like, about alcoholism, that kind of opened me up to, like, my alcoholic personality, which, like, brought me back to tackling the borderline, which is what I think lays at the root of my neuroses, my personal neuroses and my alcoholism. Isn't so much, I think I more conceptualize alcoholism as a symptom of my borderline personality and my escapist tendencies that are also a part of that. So yeah, I got the diagnosis, drank over it, drank even more over it, denial. Then I, hit a crossroads. It was, you're gonna die if you don't get your shit together, and like. That's when I got into individual therapy, and I was doing that for a couple years, and I really felt like I was plateauing, and then my therapist suggested DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy. It is a therapy specifically developed for people with borderline personality. It kind of puts together cognitive behavioral therapy, but also with radical acceptance, and like it seems like a little bit of like Ayurvedic, like treating issues with opposites. So there's a lot of Eastern practices put into that. And a really important component is that in DBT, I'm constantly being validated and constantly, like, learning how to check, like, my own self-judgmental language. Because a big thing with borderlines is that, like, we're so used to having our emotions being validated. Like, us saying that, like, we're upset and people saying, like, oh, like, you know, that's... And then that's, like, because a lot of times we're inherently empathetic. So, like, when things happen in the world, we do feel them. We do feel them in a deeper way than other people. And then that gets invalidated because other people aren't experiencing that emotional, just, I want to say deepness, because it's like, it's an emotional range. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, DBT is already helping me a lot. I've only been in it for 2 weeks, but it's just teaching me so many skills of, because, you know, I was at a point where, like, my relationship was on the rocks, and I love my partner, and we love each other, but when mental illness comes into the mix, like, sometimes love, like, is not enough, like, and I was terrible to him, and I was like, I can't stop being mean to him, and, like, taking stuff out on him, and just being impulsive and hurting him, and then just, like, pushing him away, and I hate you, don't leave me, I hate you, don't leave me, like, that's, you know, the borderline, you know, national anthem or whatever. So, like, I ended up doing the DBT, and now just, like, how much I'm able to, like, remind myself to stay present in my relationship, to be mindful, to, like, listen, to say thank you, to, like, explain, like, how I'm feeling in very scientific ways, like, hey, this happened, now I'm feeling this way, this is what I want to do. Like, and just, like, laying that out, like, you know, this happened, I'm feeling really overwhelmed, I want to get fucking drunk. And then, like, but I'm gonna go to a meeting. Like, kind of just, like, explaining myself, explaining my process, and, like, I don't know, I'm still in the process of learning a bunch of stuff, but, yeah, I don't know, if you relate at all to, like, sort of the symptoms I've laid out as far as BPD goes, or, if you've ever heard that word in therapy and didn't like it, or if you have the diagnosis and haven't done DBT, like, I really recommend it. I really recommend looking into borderline. And, you know, not so much viewing it as, like a diagnosis. Like, it's... Because I feel like it's not a stigma. It's not, like, it's stigmatizing to be, like, called borderline. Like, I don't know. There are a lot of absolutely wonderful things about borderline people, as I said. You know, there's so many. Most artistic people have mental illness. Like, most of, like, the most famous artists and writers dealt with these really deep feelings that I think if we were to retroactively psychoanalyze a lot of, like, people like, you know, Van Gogh, like, they, you know, you probably could have thrown, like, borderline in that direction as well. I don't know, because it's just, like, really heavily marked by this overwhelming feelings and this urge to purge those things. And, you know, if you're not expressing yourself artistically, like, that's when, you know, I would be drinking and shit. So, I don't know. I hope this is, like, a helpful video. I know this is something that isn't really heavily talked about. I feel like a lot of people deal with a lot of mental stuff behind closed doors. I know I do. I know very few people have seen me in the midst of a psychotic episode, and it hurts those who have. You know, it hurts the people who love me to see me in pain, like, and it's hard to love someone in pain. So, and it's hard to be in pain, and, like, I'm reaching a point where I'm not in pain anymore, and that's, like, insane, because, like, mental pain is real. It is tangible. It hurts, and it has physical manifestations as well. So yeah, I'm gonna go paint, enjoy the sunshine, and yeah, have a good rest of your week, y'all.